Good afternoon, everyone. Our colleagues at the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs tell us that more than halfway through the year, the humanitarian funding landscape remains dire. As of now, less than 17% of the $46 billion required to meet global humanitarian needs in 2025 has been received. This marks an alarming 40% drop compared to the same time last year. This funding shortfall is a stark reminder that millions of vulnerable people will go hungry without the aid they desperately need. As we have reportedly warned, we and our partners are being forced to do more with less, at tremendous cost to people. As you know, in June, facing the deepest funding cuts ever to hit the international humanitarian system, OCHA launched a hyper-prioritized global appeal to help 114 million people by targeting the most urgent needs within the broader 2025 global humanitarian overview. Turning to the Gaza Strip, the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs tells us that starvation and malnutrition, especially among children, continues to deepen. Our partners working in nutrition report that acute malnutrition among children in Gaza has reached the highest levels recorded to date. In July alone, nearly 12,000 children aged 6 to 59 months were identified as acutely malnourished out of 136,000 screened. Of these, over 2,500 children suffer from severe acute malnutrition, the most life-threatening form. 40 children required hospitalization in stabilization centers. The proportion of children with severe acute malnutrition is rising. In June and July, 18% of all acutely malnourished children had severe acute malnutrition, compared with 12% between March and May. Humanitarian access constraints are adding to the malnutrition crisis. In July, our partners were only able to reach 3%, or 8,700, of the 290,000 children under the age of 5 who require feeding and micronutrient supplements. This is due to the severe shortage of lipid-based nutrient supplements entering Gaza. This marks a dramatic collapse in the malnutrition prevention program. From April to June, an average of 76,000 children, or a quarter of those in need, were reached each month. The distribution of other key nutrition supplies for children, pregnant women, and breastfeeding mothers has also declined sharply. Our partners working in nutrition reiterate that the overall volume of nutrition supplies entering Gaza remains far below what is needed to prevent a further deterioration of the nutrition situation. Moving to shelter, more than 1 million shelter items and 2.3 million items such as tents, tarps, and sealing-off materials have been procured and are currently stranded in Jordan and Egypt, as Israeli authorities have not approved their entry. No shelter materials have entered Gaza since the 2nd of March, despite the immense needs. Existing stocks are fully depleted, and the shelter crisis continues to worsen. Most families in Gaza are living in severely overcrowded, unsafe, and undignified conditions, some with no shelter at all. An assessment in July of 44 displacement sites in Gaza City found that 43 sites, almost all, had families with no shelter. 11% of more than 6,500 surveyed households reported to be living out in the open. The shelter situation is also further deteriorating due to ongoing bombardment, displacement orders, and insecurity, which continue to displace families and disrupt humanitarian operations. Overall, since the Israeli announcement of the tactical pause to allow safe passages for our convoys, our colleagues tell us that realities on the ground remain largely the same. Aid that has entered remains by far insufficient, and our convoys continue to face impediments on their way to delivering aid. While fewer humanitarian movements have been denied outright, missions that are approved still take hours to complete. As we mentioned here, some of the missions have taken more than 18 hours to be completed, and teams have been compelled to wait on roads that are often dangerous, congested, or impassable. Yesterday, 5 out of 11 missions requiring coordination with Israeli authorities were facilitated. These included the collection of food from Kerem Shalom and Zikim crossings. Another 4 missions were impeded, but were eventually fully accomplished. These included collection of fuel from Kerem Shalom crossing and transfer of fuel from southern to northern Gaza. While limited quantities of fuel have been entering Gaza over the past week, fuel supplies remain critically limited and unpredictable, significantly undermining the ability of humanitarian partners to deliver and sustain life-saving services. One of these 4 missions was the medical evacuation of 15 children to Jordan, accompanied by 42 people, with support from the World Health Organization. While this is a positive step, the agency still reminds us that there are more than 14,800 patients in Gaza who still urgently need specialized medical care. With regard to commercial goods, several trucks containing food items have been entering Gaza over the past days. We will continue to monitor the situation and keep you posted. But as we have said repeatedly, what we need is unimpeded and predictable humanitarian access into and within Gaza, and in parallel with the flow of commercial goods. These entries have resulted in different types of food returning to markets and a slight decrease in prices. In southern Lebanon, the peacekeepers of the UN Interim Force in Lebanon continue to observe Israel Defense Forces ground and air military activities, including airstrikes by fighter jets yesterday in Sector East. According to Lebanon's Ministry of Public Health, Israeli airstrikes yesterday led to fatalities, including one child. We once more urge the parties to refrain from any activities that may endanger civilians. In a major operation to find unauthorized weapons caches and infrastructure, UNIFIL peacekeepers, working in coordination with the Lebanese armed forces, were deployed over a 320 square kilometer area in Sector West this week. The discoveries included networks of 7 fortified tunnels, 3 bunkers, artillery, rocket launchers, hundreds of explosive shells and rockets, anti-tank mines, and about 250 ready-to-use improvised explosive devices. Mortar shells and rockets were also found in Sector East. In addition, unexploded ordnance was discovered in different areas, including an anti-tank mine and rockets in Sector West and mortar rounds in Sector East. They were all referred to the Lebanese army. UNIFIL demining teams recently completed the clearance of mines and vegetation around 5 blue line markers ahead of the markers' refurbishment. These are among the about 10 markers damaged or destroyed during recent hostilities. Clearance operations around the remaining markers will begin next week. This morning, the head of the UN Office for West Africa and the Sahel, Leonardo Santos Simão, briefed the Security Council. He told his members that the security situation in the region remains of paramount concern. He said terrorist activity has surged in scale, complexity, and sophistication, including through the use of drones, alternative internet communication, and increasing collusion with transnational organized crime. Growing insecurity, Mr. Simão added, compounds an already dire humanitarian situation, and climate change continues to exacerbate those dynamics. Regarding the women, peace, security, and the youth peace security agendas, Mr. Simão reported that all countries in the region have national action plans on Security Council Resolution 1325, and several have made progress through legal reforms, gender strategies, and institutional changes. Yet despite these gains, he pointed out that gaps remain, adding that UNIWAS is expanding its collaboration with UN Women. For her part, Sima Bahous, the head of UN Women, called on council members to urge governments and regional bodies to ensure women's full, equal, meaningful, and safe participation in transitional governments and peace and security efforts. She added that at least 15% of violent extremism prevention funding should be invested in gender equality. She also called for support for the rapid deployment of women protection advisors to UNIWAS to monitor sexual violence trends, engage with parties to conflict, and secure time-bound commitments. Turning to Sudan, the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs warns that the humanitarian situation continues to deteriorate, putting even more civilians' lives at risk. OCHA's Director of Operations and Advocacy, Edem Wasornu, who is currently in the country, noted that the suffering is immense, with people trapped, displaced, or returning to ruin. She called for unimpeded access and urgent support to reach those on the front lines of hardship. And just to remind you, she will speak to you at tomorrow's noon briefing from Port Sudan. As we have previously mentioned here, with increasingly alarming food shortages and spiraling prices, people in El Fasher are reported to be resorting to eating animal feed in what is an increasingly catastrophic situation. Engagement around the calls from the Secretary General and the Emergency Relief Coordinator for a pause in the area is more important than ever. El Fasher also has the highest cost of basic goods nationwide, nearly $1,000 per household per month, which is far beyond the reach of most families. This includes more than $700 for food alone, more than 8 times the cost of basic food items in other parts of the country. These steep costs, coupled with the siege and lack of aid delivery by road for over a year, have left thousands facing starvation. In an effort to curb public health risks in North Darfur, our humanitarian partners and local authorities launched a sanitation campaign on the 5th of August, targeting 11,000 people in the localities of El Fasher and Dar es Salaam. The initiative aims to prevent disease outbreaks in overcrowded displacement sites during the ongoing rainy season. Our humanitarian partners are also scaling up the response to the cholera outbreak in the locality of Tawala, which has absorbed 330,000 displaced people fleeing conflict in Zamzam and El Fasher since April. They're increasing the number of treatment centers and oral rehydration points. In Blue Nile State, cholera cases have surged to nearly 2,800 since late June, with over 40 new infections recorded yesterday alone. 14 deaths have been reported. The Secretary General is deeply saddened by the news of the helicopter crash in Ghana on the 6th of August, which claimed the lives of 8 individuals, including the Minister of Defense, the Minister for Environment, Science, Technology, and Innovation, and the acting Deputy National Security Coordinator. He extends his heartfelt condolences to the families of the deceased and to the people and government of Ghana for their loss. And last, the International Organization for Migration is urgently calling for international support as Afghanistan faces one of the largest return movements in recent history. Since September 2023, more than 4 million Afghans have returned from Iran and Pakistan, with over 1.5 million returning in 2025 alone. IOM notes that a further 1 million Afghans are expected to return from Pakistan, following the Pakistani government's decision not to extend the stay of Afghan nationals. The IOM warns that without urgent support, the systems in place face severe risk of collapse, putting millions at risk. A report from the Afghanistan Gender and Humanitarian Action Working Group, a humanitarian working group co-chaired by UN Women and CARE International, points out that women and girls represent 1/3 of returnees from Iran so far in 2025, and about half of all returnees from Pakistan. The report warns that like all women and girls in Afghanistan, returnee women and girls face increased risks of poverty, early marriage, violence, exploitation, and unprecedented restrictions on their rights, movements, and freedoms. That's it from me. Yes, Edie?
Thank you very much, Farhan. Does the Secretary General have any comment on the announcement that Presidents Trump and Putin will meet possibly in the next week, as early as that?
Well, we'll have to see what happens, but clearly we do welcome all efforts that are intended to bring about peace in Ukraine in line with the UN Charter, international law, and the resolutions of the General Assembly and the Security Council.
And another Trump-related question: does the United Nations have any comment on the imposition of U.S. tariffs that went into effect today widely across the world?
Well, the Secretary General has made clear that he believes that all trade wars are ruinous and they need to be avoided. So this is disheartening news. At the same level, he wants to make sure that all governments are aware that at a time of trade wars, that measures need to be taken to protect the poorest and most vulnerable sectors of society who will certainly suffer as a result of the higher prices. Pam?
Thanks, Farhan. You said a few things about this possibility, but what is the UN's plan or reaction to the Israel mulling of 4 to 5 month intensification of the military action in Gaza? Thank you.
Well, we'll have to see what actually happens, but we stand firmly against any escalation of the conflict. As you know, it's already been extremely ruinous. You've had more than 60,000 casualties from this conflict just over the past nearly 2 years as it is. And there's the prospect of huge levels of humanitarian suffering, including potential starvations that could worsen if the conflict gets worse. So certainly what we are trying to do is provide the needed humanitarian aid, but that would become much more difficult if there's an expanded conflict.
And just as a follow-up, is the UN planning anything in evacuations or other kinds of aid delivery routes and in that event? And has the Israeli government in any way reached out to the UN if this were to occur?
I don't have anything on contacts with the Israeli government on this particular topic. What we are trying to do is deal with the existing conditions, which are difficult enough as it is. If they worsen, it will be unimaginably hard to ensure the security and safety of the Palestinian people. Yes, please.
Thank you, Farhan. On Lebanon, is the working assumption of UNIFIL that the weapons cache that was discovered belonged to Hezbollah? I don't think I heard you mention any assumptions around who it belonged to. And then a quick follow-up on that. Hezbollah has rejected a cabinet decision in Lebanon to disarm it. What contacts has the Secretary General or other senior officials had with Hezbollah or Lebanese officials about those efforts and those negotiations on disarmament? Thank you.
Well, on the latter part, our special coordinator in Lebanon, Ms. Hennis Blechert, has been in touch with various political groupings in Lebanon and is continuing to work with them to ensure that they deal with the challenges that Lebanon faces in a unified manner. Regarding the arms caches, I mean, we can't definitively prove who is behind them, but you're aware of the activities in southern Lebanon and the role that Hezbollah has played there in the past. Yes, Alexei.
Thanks so much, Farhan. Firstly, on the close consultations on Bosnia and Herzegovina, who will brief the Council on the behalf of the UN?
Hold on, let me just check 1 second. No briefer by the Secretariat is expected at that meeting.
All right, but maybe you have any comments on the situation regarding Milorad Dodik, Bosnian Serb leader?
We simply would ask all groups to cooperate with the basic rule of law in the country. Yes, please.
Thank you, Farhan. On the UN80 initiative, since the Secretary General would like to cut certain number of employees, when does it start? And second question, we read the reports on UNICEF, UN Women, UNFPA possibly moving to Nairobi. You said it's one of the options. When could we know the exact decisions? I tried to email them, but they don't seem to be very keen on talking about it. Thank you.
Well, these are processes that they're working with their respective staffs and the respective executive boards. If you will recall that all the agencies, funds, and programs have their own executive boards that they are in dialogue with. So this is one of the options, again, that they're considering in terms of relocating some staff, including administrative staff. As far as I'm aware, the UN office in Nigeria has already made clear its efforts to host some administrative staff as needed, and we'll have to see how that proceeds. From the Secretary General's standpoint, the UN80 proposals are working their way in different work streams. The work stream that has to do with actions he can take under his authority, the first work stream, is something where he is working on information about different budgetary steps that he can take, and the member states will be informed of that in time for their next session. Yes, in the back.
Thank you, Farhan. A quick follow-up on Lebanon. Israel justified yesterday's strikes as targeting Hezbollah's underground assets. does the Secretary General view this as what Israel calls, quote, legitimate preemptive self-defense, or does he view it again as actions that risk fueling broader regional instability? Thank you.
It's the latter. What the Secretary General wants is for all the parties to respect the ceasefire that was agreed to last year. Yes, please. Anthony, no, him first.
Thank you, Farhan. According to the World Health Organization, at least 99 people have died of starvation in Gaza this year, and including 29 children. So the people in Gaza seems to facing famine or starvation instead of malnutrition. So what's the Secretary General's comments on this? Thank you.
Well, you've heard what the Secretary General had to say. It's crucially important that as much aid that is waiting outside of Gaza be allowed in so that we can actually proceed to avoid further loss of life through severe malnutrition. You heard the statistics I read at the start of this briefing. Malnutrition rates, including among children, are alarmingly high. And so we need the crossing points, more crossing points to be opened. We need more humanitarian aid to go in, and also we need commercial traffic to go in to reduce the sense of desperation felt by the population in Gaza. Vladimir.
Thank you, Farhan. The same subject. You said yesterday that in Gaza, a 2 ounce bag of sugar costs some $170, which translates to over $3,000 per kilogram. It's hard to imagine such a market, such buyers and sellers in the face of hunger. However, Israel and Palestine use the metric system. No one there measures sugar in ounces. Such packaging is likely from humanitarian aid. So does that mean that the food sold in Gaza's market is looted or seized humanitarian aid?
It just means that those are the calculations that our colleagues in OCHA were using for the measurement. Obviously, different people can use the metric system, but they were giving the figures in ounces. Deji.
On Cambodia and Thailand conflict, today, both parties reached an agreement in Kuala Lumpur. I just want to read out some of. Both sides agreed to a ceasefire involving all types of weapons, and also agreed to abide by the international law on the captured soldiers. And both parties called this meeting a positive one. What is the reaction from the Secretary General on the latest development of the conflict between Cambodia and Thailand? Thank you.
Well, from our standpoint, the Secretary General is pleased at efforts by the leadership in Cambodia and Thailand to halt all fighting, and he hopes that they will continue to be in dialogue to resolve all outstanding issues between the two countries. Yes, Murad.
Thank you. How can this lack of funding the humanitarian response around the world be explained? And to what extent the new U.S. policies led to this situation?
These are not a shortfall caused by any one government. Many different governments are responsible, given how steep the drop is. So we've been talking in many recent years about increasing levels of donor fatigue, and that's a very real thing. But ultimately, the needs of people around the world cannot be forgotten, and we're trying to appeal again and again for all member states to realize their own responsibilities to the community around them. Part of what OCHA has done is that they did have a hyper-prioritized emergency appeal focusing on the people most in need, but even that amount has not been sufficiently supported. Yes, in the back. And then,
Thank you. A logistics question. Israel has shunned many of the agencies that deliver aid into Gaza. The United States has, for the last 4 or 5 months, been pressing the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. The question is, if the situation is so dire, why not try to see if there's a way for the agencies to work together?
Which agencies to work together? You mean you're talking again about the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation?
Yes.
Okay, well, regarding that, we welcome anyone raising their voice for aid to reach civilians across Gaza, and that pressure matters. We already have a plan that's built on long-established humanitarian principles: neutrality, impartiality, independence, and humanity. That means we go where the needs are greatest, we answer to civilians in need, and not the warring parties. Inside Gaza, we have the people and networks and the trust to deliver, and we just need to be able to go about that. Yes, please.
Farhan, going back to UNAIDS, does the Secretary General plan to get rid, when he said he will get rid of 20% of the personnel, is he going to get rid of ASG, USG, who sometimes don't do anything? Or is he going to only fire the P1, P2, P3, and so on?
First off, I dispute the idea that Assistant Secretaries General and Undersecretaries General don't do anything. I
yes, some of them,
I understand
yes.
the point you're trying to make.
Yeah.
But honestly, there's reasons why all those jobs exist, and they're mandated jobs in general. The Secretary General, in fact, made very clear he doesn't want lower level positions to be the ones that are let go of. Ultimately, it's important to have new blood go into the organization, and those are the places from which they enter. So when officers are looking at posts, they're oftentimes looking at more senior posts, not the lowest level ones. Yes, Gabriel.
Thanks, Farhan. I just want to go back to Gaza and follow up on Pam's question in a little bit. I don't know if you saw or not, but Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, in an interview with an American media outlet, confirmed that Israel will go ahead with its plan to, in his words, completely occupy the entire Gaza Strip. Is this legal?
We have already made clear the fact that the occupation of the occupied territories cannot and must not continue. It is not accepted under international law. Regarding the comments, we'll have to see what actions the government takes, and we will respond accordingly. But we've already made clear our concerns that any expansion of the conflict will be catastrophic. All right. Have a good afternoon.